You want to earn some karma on Reddit? All you got to do is go on r/motorcycles and complain about KTM's demo mode. I promise you that is one of the easiest ways to farm free internet points possible. For those of you who are unaware, KTM has this program where on some of their bikes you slap down your purchase price of the motorcycle, you get it, and all of the features come unlocked. That's the heated grips, cruise control, all the different modes come unlocked on the motorcycle. Then after a generous 600 miles, they will shut down all of those features unless you open up your wallet and start paying to unlock them again. The one time I actually made it into a Revzilla article was because I made a video complaining about this very same practice. They call it their demo mode, which honestly is just insult to injury at this point. This is one of the most icky feeling things I can think about when it comes to motorcycling, and every time the words demo mode enter my brain, a shiver runs down my spine because I honestly expect this practice to get worse because there's actually a lot of precedent for it in cars. Paying to unlock features is a thing that's been going on in video games forever, going all the way back to horse armor, which we laughed at back then too because it was just as equally stupid. But car manufacturers have been pushing this a lot. Tesla has a bunch of features that you can pay to unlock. BMW actually has subscriptions for stuff like your heated seats and steering wheels and stuff. So mercifully, we're not there yet, but maybe that's a bleak future that's coming our way. We've already talked about the KTM demo mode, but it's important to mention that they're not the only ones who have engaged in this kind of nonsense. Zero had their Cypher store where you could buy a ton of stuff. You could pay to unlock the heated grips, you could pay to unlock fast charging, you could pay to unlock additional range. And I get it, they're trying to protect the health of the battery in the motorcycle so potentially they last longer. But instead of having to pay to unlock the top 20%, why didn't they just give us something like you have on your phone where you can click protect battery and then it stops charging at 80 or 85%? Who knows, maybe by releasing this video, I'm actually cursing us to have to pay to unlock that feature on our next cell phone. No, God! Now, Zero has very quietly walked away from the entire Cypher store debacle. They won't really even talk about it anymore because they know it was one of those things that just left a bad taste in people's mouths. And now if you try to ask them about it, they're just like,
what? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
It's kind of like the smoking man from the X-Files got to him and is threatening him to turn him to goo with that like knife pen that they use to eliminate all the aliens. They're doing the same thing to the folks at Zero. Unfortunately, KTM is happily plowing away with their demo mode. You actually have to pay to unlock the track and performance modes on the Super Duke Evo here. This is the expensive Super Duke, and you had to pay to unlock additional features on the top tier bike. And this is something that I would expect to get worse as all these companies are trying to beat last year. At the end of the day, they don't care about the rider, they care about the shareholder. Unfortunately, that's not the only problem I expect to see get worse throughout the years. The next one is actually this, right here. This is a key fob for the KTM, and key fobs suck. I will go to my grave saying that these are terrible. Give me a key that I can just turn on, because when I took my bike to the track, I actually had to put this in my pants because I don't have a pocket in my tracksuit, because no tracksuits have pockets because you don't need stuff in your pockets when you're on the racetrack. Why do I have to have this? Also, you don't want to know how expensive it is to replace this stupid thing if you lose or break it. Also, what happens if you ride out and your battery dies in your key fob and you don't actually have a place that you can put the key to turn the fucking motorcycle on? Mercifully, KTM was smart enough to actually put a little sensor right here on the wing, so it's easy to turn the bike on with the key fob even though the battery died. Unfortunately, I also rode a BMW R1250 RS recently that did not have the key fob. It did have the spare key, and the chip was underneath the seat. So you actually had to take the full rider's seat off just so you could turn the motorcycle on. And God help you if you stall the bike while you're riding, because you have to push it to the side of the road, take the seat off, put the key fob down, turn the motorcycle on, put the seat back on, and then get back out and ride, all because you accidentally left the bike in second gear and couldn't get it started in time. I know I'm getting fired up over something that you probably think is really stupid and it seems minimal, but we've had keys in cars and bikes for like 100 years. You still have keys to your freaking house and they work fine. Why are we going to the $300 key fob? Oh, Spite, it's easy because you can just walk up to the motorcycle and start it on the side stand, no problem. Another reason why the KTM is up here on the lift behind me is because another trend that I expect to see continue to get worse is motorcycles getting uglier and uglier and uglier, or as some other people may say it, getting more and more modern looking. This for sure is definitely one of those things where it's down to how you perceive the motorcycle. For example, I think that this motorcycle is hideous. It's god-awful ugly. However, it kind of works with the bike, and I wouldn't have this Super Duke any other way. There is that Brabus motorcycle, which is basically a KTM Super Duke, but done up in a neoclassic style, and I think it's ugly as sin. Just give me the KTM with the Kiska styling, and let's call it a day. Mercifully, it does feel like this aesthetic infection is limited almost entirely to the hyper-naked class of motorcycles, at least for the time being. It is kind of trickling down to the middleweights, but even there, we're still seeing a lot of people hanging on to those more classical styling. Funny enough though, if you want a motorcycle that's pretty much devoid of any of these modern aesthetics, you want to just get a cruiser. Those things have looked the same for like 100 years. The cynic in me says that a bunch of motorcycle companies would do this because they can sell the uglified motorcycle to weirdos like me, and then they can make an entirely different SKU that's basically the same motorcycle with some different plastics and sell it for a little bit of an upcharge to the rest of us. I will say though, the XSR 900 is actually cheaper than the MT-09, so maybe that pokes a hole in my whole theory. Or it's the exception that proves the rule. I don't know. Me personally, I think it's mostly just because they can make another motorcycle to add to their lineup for really cheap. While we're talking about these modern aesthetics, one of the things that we do have to touch on though is winglets, and this is something that has completely trickled down from racing. But the reality is they don't do diddly squat on the street. They don't do a goddamn thing. If you want them to work, you really have to be going racing speeds. Otherwise, they're just there to look cool for people who want to think that they're fast, and that's why I love them. However, we have seen companies like Aprilia do neat stuff with their 210 V4, where the wings don't necessarily provide downforce, but they change the way that the wind goes around the rider. That's actually a cool way to integrate the wing from the race bike and still make the bike look fast, but actually have it do something that's useful for the street rider. Another small thing that's super annoying to me is having to download a bunch of different motorcycle apps on your phone because they're all kinda shitty and half-baked, and it's really annoying. I don't like KTM's app, I don't like Harley's app, I don't like CF Moto's app, and I don't like Rever because it doesn't work. I'm sorry folks at Revzilla, I use your app 3 days a year and then I uninstall it for the rest because I only use it at Get On ADV Fest because that's how they share their maps. But in a sea of useless phone apps, there's actually one that I do recommend you check out, and that is Calimoto right here. The main reason why I recommend Calimoto to you is because it's super easy to plan rides, not just on the phone, but they have an entire website set up where it's super simple to just plan rides in seconds, and they have this feature that highlights twisty roads, so you can easily find where you may want to go if you haven't ridden in an area before. Once you're done planning it on the computer, it shows up automatically in your cell phone. It's super fast, it's seamless, and sharing it with your buddies only takes a couple of button presses. Also, if you want to check out some new areas, you can check out these rides that are submitted by other people in your area, and it only takes a quick second to get it up on your phone. You just push those two buttons, then boom, you're ready to rock and roll. You hit start planning and it'll pull up the navigation screen. Also, if you're out just riding around and you find a new road that's really cool that you want to save for later, you can actually record your rides super simply with just the press of a button. This is why in a sea of useless phone apps, this is the only one that I actually recommend that you check out. You can click that link down in the description below where you can get 30 days for free using all of the premium features, or you can get 10% off of a yearly subscription. Both of those codes are down below. I actually asked the folks in the Discord server to give me some of their ideas of some of the worst trends, and one of the ones that was super popular is price. I actually read a comment on one of my videos on a CF Moto a while back, and I can't remember who said it, but basically the sentiment was, the Chinese bikes really aren't cheap. We've just forgotten what a motorcycle is supposed to cost. Specifically, do you remember what an FZ09 cost in 2014 when it first came out? It was $79.90 for a brand new FZ09. Now they're $10,899. And sure, some of that additional cost is down to the fact that there's new technology and we're on a second gen, so there was some new development costs that need to be factored in. But this year-over-year price increase is definitely a trend that's going to be here to stay forever. It's not just these annual price increases though. The volume of motorcycles that are now selling for over $15,000 is kind of crazy, especially when you think that there's only one motorcycle trying to be a hyper naked at around 11,000 bucks in the form of the Honda CB1000 SP. It's crazy to me that that motorcycle is surprising at $11,000 with its Öhlins in the back and Brembos up front, because let's be real, when you're talking about industrial quantities, those parts, they're not that expensive. And sure, that motorcycle definitely does have its problems, but the fact that there's a bike out there that can be pushed to almost 140 horsepower for under 11 grand, brand new, is nuts. And then I wanted to shout out one bonus one from the Discord server here, and this one's partially on us, and by us, I mean us reviewing motorcycles and some of the people online too. For years, we have been excusing horrific fueling on stock motorcycles as, oh, these companies, they just have to stick to emissions regulations, and all you have to do is get a tune. It's unfortunate, but you've got to fix your motorcycle fresh out of the factory. There are some of these buzzwords that you'll hear in reviews, stuff like a snatchy throttle or some flat spots here and there. That's just code for the fueling on this bike sucks wieners. A great example is the CF Moto 800 NK. That bike has horrific stock fueling underneath 4,000 RPM, especially in your commuting gears 1 and 2, the fueling is so bad the bike is basically unrideable. And I can say that because I own one. The problem is, even with all these onerous regulations out there, Triumph has managed to make fueling on just about all of their motorcycles that feels great right out of the box. Are they perfect? No, of course not. But you don't actually have to run out and buy a tune for the motorcycle to feel good. It feels good from the first mile to the last, even on the stock tune. Meanwhile, you've got Kawasaki selling the ZX4RR here in the States with almost half the horsepower as the rest of the world, and the 650s have some of the snatchiest, most terrible on-off throttle feels in any modern motorcycle. Here's the thing, me personally, I would be okay to sacrifice a few top-end horsepower if the trade-off was getting flawless fueling throughout the entire rev range. Let's bring back the Hornet, for example. Let's say that that motorcycle came out with a flawless tune at 120 horsepower, but if you wanted to, you could unlock another 20 by getting an ECU flash from Two Wheel Dyno Works or whatever. That's a sacrifice I'd be willing to make because 120 horsepower is plenty for the street, despite the fact that I have that sitting behind me. But I don't know, I definitely would love to see some more attention paid to the actual throttle feel on some of these bikes, and rather than just using the excuse of, you'll tune it away and it'll be fine. Let me know some stuff that annoys you down below, and I'll catch you in the next one. See you later.